Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at AsteBreed for the Nintendo Switch. And if you're anything like the type of gamer I am, even though this game was released in 2014, it may be the first time you've actually heard about it. And probably due to a deep sale on the eShop. But like many ports over to the Nintendo Switch console from other consoles and platforms, this one actually is worth checking out. That is, if you are the type of gamer who's willing to dip their toes into this particular developer's unique take on the shoot-'em-up genre. Diving into the story though, there is one, and it is expansive and deep and stretches from one end of the universe to the other. But unless you're really fluent in Japanese, you might not be able to pick it up, having to read the very small English subtitles while trying to defend yourself from the endless onslaught of enemy fire. A bit of the clip notes though is that some alien force has imposed their dominion over a pretty good expanse of the entire universe, and is raining destruction down upon the heads of the remnants of mankind. And of course, with some Gundam-esque technology with giant blasters and even more giant swords, it'll be your duty to use a few quirky characters and whatever weapons at your disposal to be able to retake mankind's future. And as intense as this nearly JRPG level story for a shoot-'em-up style game is, the control scheme is just about held to the same standard. You'll have the iconic ability to just hold down the fire button and litter the screen with bullets, but you'll also have your gigantic sword weapon to hack and slash your way through the screen, as well as an auto-locking nearly Aegis system of fire that can track and lock onto nearly every single target in the screen at the same time. And of course, no giant mech would be complete without some sort of charged move in their combat. And as I'm sure you can imagine, in a very intense shoot-'em-up style game that pretty much hits the ground running from the first moments all the way to the last frames, being able to effectively control all of the combat mechanics while engaging with every enemy you can is definitely going to tax your attention to detail and put you under a little bit of stress. Which is something the developer was obviously aware of, because in your end of level credits for all of your enemy scores and time bonuses, it also tracks the player's stress at the top right hand corner of the screen. And while I'm not exactly sure how that stress dynamic is exactly tabulated, I did feel like I had accomplished something when, with every level of the game, my stress mechanics were getting a little bit lower. And that's probably because the further I got into the game, I started to realize which blasts I could neutralize with my sword and which enemies had to be shot down with either the regular blasters or the automatic tracking system. And yeah, there are certain types of enemies that you can only engage with certain weapons. And of course, fighting the level bosses is going to require a perfect balance of everything at your command. But thankfully, and while this might be for better or worse for certain players, this incredibly intense game really does only last a couple of hours, even if you're doing a full completionist run. So while juggling combat might have you at your wit's end as you try to keep up with the incredibly intense story, you won't have to stress yourself out for too terribly long. Looking at AsteBreed visually though, in its presentation, it is absolutely gorgeous. And considering how much is going on in every single frame of the game, with hundreds of enemies engaging you within a split second, I was actually really impressed with the Switch's ability to just keep up. And not only was I playing the game in docked mode with a Pro Controller, which does put a little additional visual strain on the Switch's GPU, it was all being recorded by a somewhat older laptop through a capture card, and I still didn't really see any lag spikes. But of course, with so much going on screen, it would have been hard to notice if there were. Audio-wise, the game is just as intense as it is in the visuals, with full character voiceovers, incredible levels of emoting, and a soundtrack that definitely keeps up with the incredibly intense nature of the story itself. But that being said, while there definitely is a lot of praise to be had, and I've totally put in just a little bit of hype from my own experience with the game, it doesn't mean that it's beyond critique. And at least for me personally, being more of a narrative-driven gamer, I'd have to say that the first critique of the game would be its story. If you are a fan of JRPGs, if you are a fan of visual novel style games, or if you're a fan of anything with a story, having a story that is so intense and so powerful that spans the entire expanse of the universe to save humanity's future, you might want to know what that story is. And with the pace of the game and the absolute necessity of extreme focus on combat, only having very small English subtitles at the bottom corner of the screen means that you really probably won't be able to engage with any of the finer details or nuance of the story. But with a few cutscenes and just paying attention to the emotion behind each of the characters' expressions, you can certainly keep up with the overtones. Other than that, I'd have to say a next consideration would be the game's length. It is pretty short. And though you are able to stifle an intergalactic war, some players might feel like there just isn't enough. Especially because it really does take till about the final boss before you really feel like you got a good handle on the game. But nothing says you can't play it again and chase higher scores, because after all there are leaderboards. And for any completionist gamers out there, there are titles to unlock for accomplishing certain feats in-game, and a whole mess of reasons to play it 1 or 2 more times. But the final consideration might be in the game's genre. This is not a straightforward classic-style shoot-'em-up. And considering the constant shift from 2.5D to 2D, side-scrolling enemies coming in from the front, from behind, from the left, from the right, it is a bit more of an on-the-rails style third-person shooter. And being that there are enemies that you can only engage with certain weapon systems, it's not exactly a straight shooter either, and does require a bit of that hack and slash with your sword. But one final consideration for the game might be its difficulty level. Because like most good shooters out there, a lot of the weapon systems are fully automated, including the use of the sword, which you can just hold down the action button and continue slashing in a sphere around yourself. It is pretty easy to get into the habit of just holding down that sword button and auto-locking on everything else, then kind of skating through at least until the boss fights. But I'm not saying that that's going to make it a game-breakingly simple experience, because the absolute onslaught, the rush of the enemies, does mean that even if you're taking the easy way out, it's not going to be that easy. And so if you are the type of gamer who's looking for some fast-paced combat with maybe a little bit of story and some good visuals, then AsteBreed might be something you want to check out, especially right now while it's on sale for like 80% off. But anyway, that does about bring us to the end of the review of AsteBreed now on the Nintendo Switch, so if you enjoyed the review, or especially if you found it helpful, feel free to throw us a thumbs up or a like to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. Because there are new and unique indie games coming out literally every single day, so whether it's an easy hard pass or an absolutely unforgettable gem, chances are, if it's on the Switch, you're going to find out about it right here. But anyway, this has been The Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.